Hello and welcome to the Niagara Podcast. I am your co-host, Eric Larson with Intelligent Buildings, and today I am joined by Mark Peetock from Linkspring and a former Niagara industry vet who I'm excited to hear from today. So Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Eric. Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here at the Niagara Summit. It's time that we get back to business, as we say, and happy with the turnout, the content, the venue, so really exciting to be back.
Yeah, I've been asking people if it's their first Niagara Summit. I'm assuming this is not yours.
No, I can't say that it's my first one. I think I've been to every Niagara Summit except the very first one, and as a former head of marketing and communication at Tritium, I used to put on these. And so it's just nice to see that is continuing, that tradition is continuing with these Niagara Summits.
Yeah, you set a good precedent because there is a lot of activity behind us, a lot of good sponsors, good booths, a lot of energy, some good presenters earlier today. So I know the team's doing a good job and you set the path.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, what's interesting is that when I first got into this business and was working at Tritium, there was roughly 18,000 instances of the Niagara framework there. Today, we look at the number of instances globally, and we're approaching 1.1 million instances. And again, that was not too long ago where it was 18,000 plus. Now at 1.1, the growth is continually to be phenomenal, and Niagara is continuing its de facto standards as the building operating platform of the built environment, so which is great.
Yeah, I can't do the calculation off the top of my head, but that's
it's big.
That's a big percent growth increase.
It is.
So take me back then. How did you get involved in buildings, and then how did you get involved with Tritium?
You know, it's interesting. Buildings was an accident. I got involved on the technology side because previous to Tritium, I was worked in a consulting marketing agency, and a lot of our clients were technology-driven clients. And one day, or somehow, I found out or something, and got engaged in a conversation with the then president of Tritium, John Petsy. And he says, you know, we're looking for a guy to come in there and market and help us with marketing. I said, tell me a little bit about the industry. He told me a little bit about it, told me a little bit about Niagara, and then after that, it was over.
You were hooked.
I was hooked. It's really exciting, and the market I have seen has really grown substantially. Back then, we were just really concerned about integration and normalizing data, which again, Niagara's foundation is built on that, and connectivity. Today, it's that and so much more. It's interoperability, it's the data, as you well know, being with IB, and all of this, there's no more, it's that connection between disparate devices and systems. So you look at it, that's Niagara, you know.
That it is, yeah, it's come a long way. I'm a little newer to the industry, but have certainly seen the impact that Niagara has had and appreciate your efforts. But I feel like I asked the question, how'd you get into buildings? And everyone's just, it's random. And you know, for me, it was kind of random too, but you know, brought you to this. There's been a whole lot of change. You know, looking back at your transition to your current company, Linkspring, you know, some years at Niagara, Tritium, how did that come about, that switch?
Well, it was interesting is that when I kind of decided that I wanted to move on, Linkspring has been a customer of Tritium's from the very beginning. Linkspring was one of the very first original OEMs who became a partner with Linkspring. And the word got out that I was looking, so Terry Swope, President and CEO, called me and says, you're not going anywhere, let's talk. We talked and whatever. And what's nice about it is, in my opinion, at that particular time, is I could continue to do what I wanted to do with the Niagara framework, but just do it at a little bit different level and some different challenges. So it's worked out well. And today I'm one of the execs at Linkspring and head up marketing, strategy, communications, and we constantly are pushing the Niagara framework as hard and as far out as we can really to get it to go.
Yeah, well, I'd like to dig in a little on LinkSpring, but first we kind of talked right before this. But what's something, because marketing's kind of been in the discussion, I think that Tritium, the efforts of marketing to advance our industry and make it a little broader appeal is important. What's something you did when you were CMO, I believe, that was kind of unique and really, really worked, and you found that it worked for advancing the efforts?
I think the big one, there were several, but the big one for me was to take Niagara, and it was positioned as an integration platform, and transition it to a smart building platform, because then smart buildings were starting to incubate and become topics of discussion. So I think being able to leverage Niagara's strengths and help push it over to the smart building side of our business, I think that was a key moment for Niagara and its brand and Tritium.
Okay. So is that kind of taking the conversation from the technical to a little broader commercial real estate kind of conversation, is that right?
Exactly, because I think the conversation today is both a business conversation and a technology conversation, but today I believe that it's more weighted towards the business side, with the technology being the enabler and to enable the business side, whether it's identified KPIs, specific outcomes that need to be driven by the owner, the operator, the managers of those buildings, and so forth. But again, it's the technology that does it versus the technology driving the business.
Yeah, well, you can tell there's a lot of technology enthusiasts here. There's a lot of advancement in technology in our industry, across industries, and it enables a lot of things. But if you don't talk about those outcomes that a smart building can give you, it's hard to have the business conversation and advance the conversation like that.
Exactly, and I think we owe it to ourselves as a collaborative industry to help get that word out about the types of outcomes that are possible with building technology and the stuff that we have available at our hands today, and some of the stuff that is in development and hopefully going to be out in the marketplace soon. Yeah,
a lot of excitement around just the Niagara Summit and the community itself. I think you can tell it's a close-knit community. You're shaking hands left and right. There's a lot of friendly people here, so I'd encourage all the tech advancements and just meeting people at future summits. So looking forward to that. So back to LinkSpring. So you kind of mentioned what you all do. So your role right now, CMO, what's some of the current capabilities and maybe success stories you've had at LinkSpring?
So I think the big one is this. We realized back in 2015 that the edge was starting to become topic of conversation. The technology was taking us that way. So we're happy to say, from our perspective, we were the first partner of Tritium's to take the Niagara platform and accept portability and port it onto our own Niagara hardware devices other than a Jace.
Interesting.
So this has enabled us to create what we call a fully Niagara stack IP horizontal architecture. So instead of a vertical architecture, which we all grew up in the traditional side of the business, we're changing it to the IP side, because again, with IP becoming more relevant today on networks, the power of our processing capabilities today, cybersecurity,
very important,
so forth and so on, is we saw that, and to be able to extend the Niagara platform from the edge to the enterprise is something that we're very proud of, and we're excited about, and moving forward strong in that.
Yeah, so in my previous role that you saw the architectures, that was kind of the field controller and then the master controller and the workstation that sits in the boiler room somewhere. So you're saying that by taking it to the edge, by kind of having a flatter stack, less of that segmentation, if you will. What does that enable for an end user?
So one, I think, as I said earlier, I think one, it's much easier to help manage and control.
Okay.
Number two is the fact that in this case we're using Niagara, and it's all programmed with Workbench. So it's the same programming tools. You don't need multiple programming tools, multiple things. It's really one centralized operating platform. 3, the cybersecurity. 4, easier to manage and whatever. And especially today where the building owners and operators, not only are they looking for these outcomes, but they want a single experience, and I think this is delivering it, help delivering that single experience in a less complicated manner.
Sure. So right, the owners are seeing, I guess you all are working with facility managers, you're the integrators, you're doing some software development behind the scene, integrating with Workbench. So bringing those all, I guess bringing all the people to the table is what's enabling these businesses to get a better grip on their facilities management. Is that about it?
It is, and control and the whole just general manageability of their building systems, because I think, much has changed since COVID. Of course, we cannot deny that. And the way we operate and manage our buildings is constantly changing.
Right.
But the fact that, we want to manage and control HVAC and temperature, we want to help reduce energy costs, all the things we've grown up with traditionally, but now where we see it, I see it, is we've talked about the convergence of IT and OT. We started talking about that 5 or 6, 7 years ago. and that's taking place. But where I see the newer convergence is the traditional operational side of the house, which the HVAC and that type of thing, with the new workplace deliverables that we have to. Occupancy level, indoor air quality, so forth and so on. So I see those two now, operational side and workplace, converging along with, of course, OT and IT.
Yeah. So are you all focused on HVAC? Are there integrations into work order management systems, that kind of thing?
All of the above.
Okay.
All of the above. We've got we're continuing to build out our, what we call our edge to enterprise practice.
Okay.
And that includes your connectivity, your integration, your interoperability, your data, the normalization of the data, all of that, making sure it's secure, the integrity of the data, and then being able to apply various applications to do energy, FDD, whatever on top of that. So yes.
Okay, all the above.
All the above, yeah.
So you're enabling operations for these buildings kind of at a portfolio level.
Exactly.
Okay.
And again, you look at the different types of buildings in the marketplace, whether commercial office building, a K through 12 school, a university, data center, retail, restaurants. There's some similarities between what they're looking to do, but there's also a lot of unique things that these industries are looking to do.
Sure.
And I think, again, but having that one manageable, centralized operating platform based on Niagara, I think really allows us to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I stopped by the booth and learned a little bit more.
Good.
So looking forward, you mentioned indoor air quality.
Right.
You mentioned how COVID has changed our perspective on being in buildings. What are some of the things that you're looking forward to that LinkSpring and/or Tritium are doing based on some of those trends?
Well, I think one is the whole ESG movement. I think that is something that we believe is really starting to be embraced by large corporations, small corporations. And what's different, in other words, we've talked about ESG, it may have not been called that in the past. It was really energy and maybe sustainability, but
for years, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what's different is that, yes, the technology is here, the business case is here, but in my opinion, the driver is, this is PR driven, public relations driven. We never had that companies are going out publicly and committing to specific net carbon, net zero type things, or whatever the case is. Plus, employees only want to work for companies who are socially responsible,
Yep.
Who are sustainable. Also, you and me and everybody as consumers, whether business to business or B2C, we want to buy from companies who are doing their part to be sustainable and socially responsible. So I see that one. I also see, again, the continued importance of data, and we can collect the data. We can identify, we can collect it, we can access it. Yes, we can tag it, normalize it, and all that, but it's being able to interpret and use that data to accomplish some type of action, whatever that is. And I'll leave one more. The third one, again, I believe is that our building environment has changed because of COVID. It's changed in that we have to be able to remotely access them anytime, anywhere, and to be able to manage them on a daily basis based on the specific occupancy levels, because we're not going to get to, in the near future, a fully occupied building anymore. It's going to be this hybrid work model for a while. So we have to be able to manage our systems and our equipment based on the occupancy level and where people are in the building.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all related, the whole smart building conversation. You've got occupancy, which is driving real estate decisions, which is driving, hiring talent and retaining talent, and LinkSpring and Tridium are helping accomplish all of those goals. So the other interesting piece, you mentioned ESG, a lot of it's PR. So with your background in marketing and PR as well, I'm sure that kind of is something that you all are looking at pretty closely these days.
We are. We're 100%. And the conversations I have with building owners and operators today, the two main topics are ESG and cybersecurity. And I'm glad cyber is part of that, because I think we collectively as an industry, we still have a ways to go, not from the technology perspective, but from making that part of the everyday conversation and ensuring our very best that we are practicing good cyber posture. And I look at it as it's a shared responsibility. For us as a technology manufacturer, provider, it's up to us to make our offerings as secure as possible. Tridium, Niagara, same way. It is for the system integrators, the contractors, the folks who are out there. They need to make it part of what they deliver. And then finally, the building owner operator, that should be questions all the time. What are we going to do with respect to our cyber posture?
Yeah, cybersecurity, right, just being in the news as much as it is, it's hard to not get those questions. So if your technology is cyber secure and the way that you're using it is cyber secure, it then comes to, is this a mentality of cybersecurity throughout your organization? IT, OT, and everything in between.
Yeah, and a friend of mine put it this way, it's a cyber culture. And it's exactly what you just said. It's the culture, not just from our typical IT things we use, our laptops and so forth, our servers, but the OT side of the house is just as important to be cyber secured as possible. And I know IB is extremely deep into the cybersecurity efforts of our buildings today. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll thank Fred Gordy as well. I know he's connected us.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we're happy to help in the cybersecurity phase. So, well, Mark, I enjoyed it. I think our listeners learned a lot from this. Is there a way that they can reach out to you if needed?
Sure, LinkedIn, hit me up there, or our LinkSpring website, or mark.peacock@linkspring.com.
There we go. Well, thanks to Mark, thanks to our audience, and thanks to the Niagara listeners.